Now I will talk a little bit more about three types of memory: context dependent memory, state dependent memory, and mood congruent memory. So, first, let's talk a little bit about context dependent memory. This means that we have an easier time remembering material if we are tested in the same environment that we learned the material or a similar environment. So there was a study done with scuba divers. So in the first version of the study, scuba divers learned some material on land, and then they were tested on land, and they had good recall of the material. In the next version, scuba divers learned some material underwater, and then they were tested underwater. And again, they had good recall because the context that they were tested in matched the context that they learned the material in. But in another version, scuba divers learned some material on land, and then they were tested underwater, and they had poor recall. Likewise, scuba divers learned some material underwater, then they were tested on land, and again, they had poor recall. And the reason why is because the context that they were tested in did not match the context where they encoded the material. So this is called context dependent memory. Next, we'll talk about state dependent memory. So this means that if a person engages in some type of drugs or alcohol and they learn something while they're under the influence, when they're sober, they will probably have a hard time remembering. So, for example, let's say that a person gets drunk, and while they're intoxicated, they decide, I'm going to hide my car keys from myself because I don't want to drive while I'm drunk. So they hide their car keys while they're under the influence. Well, the next day when they're sober, they will probably be unable to remember where they put the car keys while they were inebriated. In fact, they might not even remember that they did hide the car keys. So this is called state dependent memory. So this comic is just a little humorous depiction of it. The person says, I don't know what any of these notes mean. I was really drunk when I wrote them. Maybe I could use state dependent memory, get really drunk again, and remember what they meant. And then the lady says, Sir, this is a coffee shop, sir. But at any rate, this is just supposed to be a little humorous interpretation of state dependent memory. Now, in practical terms, the ideal way for studying, of course, it's obvious, is to study sober and then take the test sober. And that will be the best way in terms of taking an exam and performing your best on an exam. And then the last type of memory I want to talk about is called mood congruent memory. And this is where we more easily recall experiences that are consistent with the current mood that we're in, whether it's a good mood or a bad mood. So, an example of that is that teen ratings of their parents are tightly linked to the teen's current mood. So, if they're in a good mood, they give their parents high ratings, but if they're in a bad mood, they give their parents bad ratings. So that's related to mood congruent memory. And then, of course, here's another little humorous comic. The couple is fighting and they say, I can't remember what we're arguing about either. Let's keep yelling and maybe it will come back to us. It's very much common sense. If you're in a depressed mood, what tends to happen is you start to think about more sad memories. And then if you're not careful, it can really spiral out of control. If you're in a happy mood, then your mind kind of naturally goes to those happy memories. So, again, it's just very helpful to understand these types of memories, and I'm going to leave it here.